If you and I were to meet a Homo sapiens from 60,000 years ago, you might be surprised. They would look almost exactly like us. Their posture, their face, even the size and shape of their brain, indistinguishable from someone walking the streets today. And yet, for tens of thousands of years, these humans lived in small, scattered groups. They left behind only simple stone tools, no great monuments, no sprawling cities, no written records. So here's the puzzle. If the hardware of the human brain was already in place, why did it take us so long to use it fully? Why did culture, art, religion, and technology erupt only tens of thousands of years after biology had already made us ready? This mystery is known as the Sapient Paradox, coined by archaeologist Colin Renfrew. And tonight, we'll dive into one of the most fascinating riddles of our past. Why did humans take so long to act modern? To understand this paradox, we first need to distinguish between two key concepts, anatomical modernity and behavioral modernity. Anatomical modernity refers to humans who look like us. This means Homo sapiens, with our physical structure, our cranial shape, and crucially, the same brain size we have today. Fossils show that anatomically modern humans emerged in Africa as far back as 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. But behavioral modernity is something else entirely. It's not about what we are, it's about what we do. Behavioral modernity is expressed in art, symbols, rituals, sophisticated tools, trade networks, and social structures. It's about living in a way that feels recognizably human to us. And here's where the paradox lies. We had the hardware, the brain, for hundreds of thousands of years. But the software, culture, didn't fully appear until much later, roughly 40,000 years ago in Europe, or a little earlier, in scattered sites in Africa. What counts as behavioral modernity? Think of beads and ornaments worn as jewelry, pigments like ochre used as paint or makeup, burials with grave goods, long-distance trade, and, of course, art carved or painted into bone and stone. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, for example, archaeologists discovered 70,000-year-old pieces of ochre with geometric carvings, arguably the first abstract art in human history. In Europe, carved bone flutes dating back more than 40,000 years suggest music was already part of our lives. And in Italy, ornaments and tools left by early Homo sapiens hint at symbolic thought. And yet, such finds are rare and scattered, leaving us with a haunting silence in between. So why the silence? Why the long delay between biological readiness and cultural explosion? One theory argues that it wasn't intelligence that was lacking. It was conditions. Picture a small group of hunter-gatherers, maybe 30 or 40 people, living on the edge of survival. If one person invents a clever new tool or creates a ritual that gives meaning to life, that idea could vanish if they die or if the group splinters. Without dense populations to preserve and share innovations, culture remained fragile. Anthropologists call this the ratchet effect. Culture builds like a ratchet. It can only move forward if knowledge is preserved and transmitted. But without enough people, every innovation risked slipping backward, disappearing entirely. Another theory is the gossip trap. In small societies, stories and rules kept groups together, but these simple systems also capped complexity. There were no bureaucrats, no chiefs, no scribes, just face-to-face societies where innovation wasn't always necessary for survival. And then there's the possibility of archaeological bias. Stone tools survive for tens of thousands of years, but wood, leather, or plant fibers decay. Could it be that our ancestors were more advanced than we think, but their culture simply rotted away? The real shift came after the Ice Age, around 12,000 years ago. Climate stabilized, seasons became predictable, humans began to domesticate plants and animals. For the first time, we could produce more food than we immediately consumed. This led to Sedentism, staying in one place. And Sedentism was the spark that ignited civilization. Think about what it meant. Villages grew, populations swelled, storage became essential. Suddenly, some people farmed while others specialized, making tools, shaping pottery, weaving cloth, leading rituals. Hierarchies emerged, religious centers and temples arose, and with them, systems of property, law, and power. Archaeologists call this the tectonic phase of society. Just as tectonic plates shift the continents, Sedentism shifted the very foundations of human culture. Monumental architecture followed. Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, built 11,000 years ago, is one of the earliest known temples. Vast stones were carved and erected long before the pyramids. And all of this was made possible because people stayed put long enough to plan, organize, and remember. But demographic and environmental factors may not tell the whole story. Some scholars argue that the human mind itself changed. According to cognitive theories, around this period, humans began forming what researchers call autocatalytic networks of thought. In other words, ideas began to spark other ideas, creating a chain reaction of innovation. This wasn't just about memory, it was about imagination. Humans could not only recall the past, but also project detailed visions of the future. They could imagine gods, spirits, myths, and social contracts that didn't physically exist, but that everyone believed in. And symbols became powerful. A bead or a painted animal was not just decoration, it was a message of status, of identity, of belonging. A burial with ornaments wasn't just a body in the ground, it was a story about life, death, and meaning. Some researchers suggest that language itself may have crossed a threshold here, becoming not just practical, but symbolic, filled with metaphors and abstraction. This symbolic turn might explain why we suddenly see cave art bursting forth across Europe. Chauvet, Lascaux, Altamira. These were not mere doodles. They were ritual, myth, vision. They were humans seeing themselves as more than survival machines. Let's look at a few sites where the Sapient Paradox leaves its fingerprints. At Blombos Cave, 70,000 years ago, humans etched cross-hatched patterns into ochre and strung beads from shells. These weren't tools for survival. They were symbols, perhaps of identity or status. In Italy's Eleusinian culture, around 45,000 years ago, ornaments, bone tools, and pigments appear alongside the arrival of Homo sapiens. It's as if symbolic thought migrated with them into Europe. And then there's the explosion of Upper Paleolithic art in Europe. Paintings of lions, mammoths, and bison rendered with breathtaking realism. Some caves even have acoustic properties, suggesting rituals that blended sound, vision, and perhaps altered states of consciousness. Each of these case studies suggests that humans were experimenting with symbolism earlier than we once thought. The gap may not be as wide as Renfrew described. So why the long silence before the noise of culture? Theories remain diverse. Demographic thresholds. Maybe there just weren't enough people to sustain culture. Environmental triggers. Perhaps only the stability after the Ice Age allowed innovation to flourish. Cognitive shifts. Our minds themselves reached a tipping point in symbolic thought. Archaeological bias. Fragile artifacts may have vanished, leaving only stone behind. And here's the twist. Recent discoveries keep pushing back the timeline. Jewelry in Africa, pigments in caves, ornaments in Europe, these finds suggest humans may have been modern much earlier than once believed. Maybe the Sapient Paradox isn't about why culture appeared late, but why it appeared unevenly. Perhaps innovation sparked in pockets, only to vanish, until conditions were right for it to spread across the globe. The Sapient Paradox is more than an archaeological debate. It's a mirror into ourselves. It asks, what truly makes us human? Our biology, or the stories we tell, the symbols we share, the cultures we build together? Maybe we were always ready. Maybe we didn't need bigger brains, only bigger networks, more people, more memory, more shared imagination. And so the question remains, were humans sitting on genius for tens of thousands of years, waiting for the right spark? Or have we simply not yet uncovered the fragile traces of the first cultures? The paradox endures. And in that mystery, we see not only our past, but the fragile, astonishing miracle of our present. So what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring the mysteries of our origins, don't forget to subscribe. Because the story of us is far from finished.